When I was in 7th grade, I had to choose to take either Spanish or Latin classes for the next 3 years. Most people chose Spanish, and despite my middle school desire to always go against the grain, I chose Spanish too. In this instance, I chose the road more traveled by, and I'm so glad that I did. It made so much of a difference in my life. Over the next 5 years, I fell in love with the Spanish language, so much so that I decided to major in it in college. This opened so many doors for me and genuinely changed my life. On the left is a picture of me studying abroad in Spain, and on the right is me presenting anthropological research at a conference that I conducted completely in Spanish. If I didn't speak Spanish, I would have fewer opportunities for my future, and my worldview would be much more limited. There are people in my life who I wouldn't know if I couldn't speak to them in Spanish. I am so grateful that middle school me chose Spanish and put in the hard work studying so I can be where I am now. I really believe that learning another language is something that everyone should try to do, and there is no better time to start learning than today. Learning a new language expands your horizons by introducing you to new people, new concepts, and new media. And it brings opportunities to your life that you would never have expected. In this presentation, I'm going to cover some benefits of learning a second language and how you can get started today. It isn't easy for most people, but it is so worth it. Just like any other skill, if you put the work in today, you will definitely thank yourself later. The beginning is definitely the hardest part, so that's why I'm going to share some tips on how to get started. There's lots of good reasons to learn a new language, but one of them is that it can help you better understand culture. In my anthropology classes, I learned about the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. This theory says that a person's native language influences the way that they think. Linguistic anthropologists use the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis to learn about a culture through the language that they speak. For example, the vocabulary of a language reflects what is most important to a culture. Any anthropologist will tell you that you have to learn the language of a culture to have a deep understanding of it. There is a level of cultural understanding that can only come when you speak the language of a people. If you were interested in another culture, you should try to learn the language, because you'll learn more than you thought you could about that culture. For example, Spanish has the word sobremesa. This refers to sitting around the table after a meal with family or friends, talking, not about anything in specific, just catching up. The existence of this word in Spanish reflects the importance of family and quality time in Spanish-speaking cultures. Another good reason to learn a new language is that you can consume more media in its original language, whether that's film, music, or literature. You can pick up more nuance and meaning in the original than you would in a translation. This is a picture of Don Quixote, who's one of the most important characters in Spanish literature. You can read Don Quixote in English, but I think there's something special about reading a text in its original language. Learning a new language will also allow you to communicate with so many more people. Now that I speak Spanish, there are just more people in the world that I can talk to. Not only is it helpful to be able to communicate with more people for business or for travel, it's also just a great way to make new friends. There's people in the world right now that you can't talk to if you only speak English. Learning a new language is also very good for your brain. A 2012 Swedish study found that learning a second language can make different parts of your brain grow physically bigger, and cognitive scientists agree that challenging your brain by learning another language is good for you. Bilingual people have better attention spans and multitasking skills. So by this point, I've probably convinced you that learning a second language is worth it. But now the question is, how do you get started? It can seem really overwhelming at first to learn a new language, but don't worry, I'm going to share some tips with you on how to take the first steps. So all experts agree that the best time to learn a second language is when you're a baby. So blame your parents for that one. But the second best time to start learning a language is today. The sooner you start, the more time you can spend practicing and getting comfortable with a new language, and the sooner you'll be able to speak comfortably in a new language. If at all possible, I recommend trying to take a class to start learning your target language. A classroom setting will keep you accountable, and your teacher can help correct your pronunciation and your grammar. See if your local library or community college are offering any language classes. If those aren't available, look for an online class. Again, having a teacher there in those first months of learning a language can really help you build a good foundation. But if a class isn't available to you, that doesn't mean you can't get started. learning a new language. There's excellent free language learning apps and websites like Duolingo that make it easy to learn the basics, and these websites are adding new languages you can learn all the time. You will need to stay disciplined and practice to make this work, but you can do it. Another way to learn a language, or a way that you can supplement any of these language learning pathways, is to consume media in your target language. When I was learning Spanish, I read fairy tales in Spanish. Since I already knew what was happening, I could just focus on the vocabulary and the grammar, and I learned a lot without becoming frustrated or confused. This is a great way to learn any language faster. If you can, you should also find a buddy to keep you accountable. Just like a diet or a workout regimen, you need someone to rely on to make sure you stick with it. This has the added bonus of having someone you can practice your speaking skills with. So find a friend to learn with you. You all can create goals together and then keep each other accountable so you can learn faster. But no matter what language learning tools you use, the key is to learn like a little kid. Kids aren't afraid to make mistakes when they speak. They just try to make themselves understood. When you're learning a language, it is absolutely essential to try and fail a lot. Making mistakes is how you learn. If you're too afraid you're going to mess up, you will never speak and then you'll never learn. So learn like a little kid. So think of language as a key that can open the door to a whole new world. That world has new people, new experiences, and new opportunities for you. But you have to pick up the key by learning the second language to open that door. If you're in quarantine while you're watching this, what else is there to do? Challenge your brain and distract yourself by learning a really important new skill. If I hadn't learned Spanish, my life would be totally different than what it is now. My world would be more limited, I would have fewer opportunities, and I would have less people in my life. When you start learning a language, you open the door to new people and experiences. So don't wait. Start learning today. Your future self will thank you.